When we are in a position where someone's career or someone's profession takes precedence, then it feels like my feelings aren't valid because I'm not doing those things. And it feels like then I don't have a right to complain because I should just be happy because I'm
Right.
married to a doctor.
100%.
I don't have the right to feel upset that he's missed my birthday again, that he has missed our kids' basketball game, that he has missed these things because he's on call, because he's helping other people's families.
On today's episode of Empowered in Health, I have Lisa Muehlenbein here. And Lisa and I actually connected through one of the business mentorships that we've both been a part of. And we immediately connected because of our passion for really empowering women, families about this topic of inside out health and wellness, and especially really visiting this idea of burnout and what that means and can look like in a family. And, Lisa's expertise is really around supporting physician families and people working in healthcare and really talking about what does that mean and what does that look like from a family dynamic. And so, Lisa, thank you so much for your time today, my friend. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Erin. I am grateful to be here with you today.
It's going to be so good. I love starting with hearing people's stories a little bit. And, you've shared a lot with me offline or even before we recorded our podcast today. And I'd love for you to share that with the audience a little bit more about your journey you have your PhD now. You've been supporting your husband throughout his physician career. You have this huge heart to serve healthcare families around this topic of burnout. But talk to us a little bit about what led you to this point and really what your personal journey has been with navigating all of these different scenarios.
That's a great question. And to really do it justice, I kind of have to take us back a little bit. I have to age myself some and share that I met my husband in his second year of residency, and that was in 1996, I think we met. And we started dating and we were about to get married, and I was in college and I was about to graduate. I wasn't far from graduating, and we were moving. He was finishing residency. We were getting married. We were moving away. We were actually moving to my hometown in a small rural town in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And I was like, we were living in Ohio at the time. And I was like, oh, shoot, I don't want to have any loose ends. So at that time, it was the paper course catalog. So I opened up the paper course catalog and said, okay, with the credits I have, what can I finish in the time I have left? Yeah. And I should share that I was at that time working on a BS in exercise science. Well, this course catalog really pretty much said, you can finish an associate degree in early childhood education. Yeah. And I was like, okay. Yeah. Well, I had no intention of working in childcare or, preschool or, early education. I had no intention, but I also didn't want to leave loose ends. Yeah. So I finished my associate degree, put my education on hold while we moved away and got married. And he started his first job in my hometown. And he knew that I always wanted to go back, that it was a goal, an intention of mine to always finish that bachelor's degree. And part of that was because I already had one child. My son at the time, when we got married, he was 6. And I was a teen mom when I had him. And my parents said, you will finish high school and you will go to college. And that just stuck in my head forever. Those conversations that kind of shape you and they are like core memories. My dad has since passed, but I'm sure if I asked my mom, she probably wouldn't even remember saying that to me, but it was something that stuck with me forever. So my husband knew that this was always something that I had wanted to do. Well, we added 3 children to our family, and we moved multiple times through multiple states. And I ended up in South Carolina, and I was always interested in health and wellness, just like you. And I became a yoga teacher. At this point now, today, it's been 24 years ago. And when I lived in South Carolina, I owned a yoga studio for 8 years and served my community in that way. But this whole time, I still wanted to go back. I still had that seed planted in me that I needed to go back and finish my bachelor's degree. Well, along came one more move, and we ended up in Florida. Yeah. At this point, Oldest three kids are adults. I've got my youngest in middle school. I had closed my studio. We moved to Florida. Again, all of these moves were following my husband's career.
Yeah.
So yes, I had a business. Yes, I had a yoga studio. But two things to add to that was always I'm kind of on the back burner.
Yeah.
And his career always dictated where our life went.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would add about that is, it's a yoga studio. How stressful could it be?
Yeah.
It was 5,000 square feet. We had multiple rooms. We had a spa, we had a tea bar, we had a boutique, and I had about 20 employees.
Wow.
So it was a kind of a big deal. And so when we moved, I was getting my oldest daughter. So she was my number 3. She was going off to college at Florida State. And my youngest daughter, I was getting integrated into middle school. And it wasn't until then that I sat back and thought, oh my God, I did not realize how burnt out I was until all of these other things went away. And I was like, it literally blew my mind.
Yeah.
So fast forward, get everybody settled. I'm looking at two universities that were down here that I could see from the highway. Every time we went to the airport, I could see them. I reached out to them. I was like, let me see what's going on there. Maybe I'll go back now.
Yeah.
And then as I'm getting everyone where they need to be, I again shelved that idea, put it on the back burner. So what happened next was 2020 and COVID.
Yep.
And the world shut down.
Yep.
And I got a phone call from one of those universities and they said, hey, just want to let you know that our next session is starting in 2 weeks if you're interested. And it was all remote. And I was like, I said to my husband, I said, well, what do you think?
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything else.
Yeah. Yep.
He's still going into work. My youngest daughter is still at school. She was remote for a while and then they went back. But he's like, well, why not?
Yeah.
So I did.
Yeah.
And I had so many credits left over that I finished my bachelor's degree in health and wellness in a year.
Wow.
I did, but it was an accelerated course load.
Yep. Okay.
Yes. And so I finished everything in a year. And so now it's 2021. And I'm like, well, it's still kind of COVID.
Yep. Yep.
And I thought about getting like a real job outside of the house. And I had never really been on someone else's schedule, having my own schedule for, while I had my studio. And we examined what that would look like for our family. And what it meant was I still needed to chauffeur our youngest daughter because she wasn't driving yet. I needed to get her to play practice. I need to get her to and from school because there wasn't a bus. I needed to do all of these things for my family. These things were really on my plate because my husband wasn't able to do them with the requirements of his job. So I said, well, since I'm kind of at the beck and call of everybody else still, why don't I just keep going?
Yeah.
And I should add that when I was working on my bachelor's degree, I thought, wow, anytime I could write about, an optional topic, it was about burnout because of what I was experiencing.
Yep.
That's how it started because I didn't realize how burnt out I was. And then toward the end of that year, I did my senior thesis on programs like continuing medical education programs for physicians.
Yeah.
Because it was COVID and I was seeing what was happening to our medical community.
Yeah.
So my focus shifted on how burnout affected me to how burnout affected the medical community.
Yeah.
So I continued on working on a combined master's and PhD program in psychology. And when it got time to write my dissertation, I was talking to my dissertation chair and she said, well, it's a shame you can't write about how burnout affects physician spouses. And I was like, well, I actually can because I'm a part of 3 different organizations, which are called alliances, which are counterparts to medical societies. Some counties have them, some states have them, but not all. But there is a national organization, the American Medical Association Alliance, which I am a part of. And I thought, well, I do have access to physician spouses. And so I put the call out for people to interview with me. And I sat down with them and asked them questions about what their experience was with physician burnout and how that crossed over into the marital relationship. And what I found was really interesting. So
Really
that's kind of
interesting.
how I got to where I am right now, serving physician families who are dealing with the unique complexities of a medical marriage, specifically burnout.
Yeah, fascinating, Lisa. And, so many things I would love to unpack inside of everything you just shared. And the first area I kind of want to go into is how you felt along the road and along the journey. You talked a lot about how you had to keep revisiting what was realistic for your family. Where were you really at? What was going to work best for you? Where did your passion lie? And a lot of it, you kind of had to sacrifice. You kind of had to pause. You kind of had to continue to pivot and figure out, okay, what's actually going to work here? And I know for a lot of women, especially when we think about marriage dynamic and supporting someone else's career or supporting your spouse's career, there is that level of sacrifice. And in that, you probably had some sort of identity shifts or, questioning of your purpose or trying to figure out like, where do I fit in that scenario? And I think a lot of women can relate to that. So can you share a little bit about maybe something along those lines that you experienced in that season where you were kind of putting what you were called to do on hold and kind of how you felt when you were navigating that?
Yeah. So my middle two children are 14 months apart.
Okay.
So that was a lot of weight. And then my oldest son, he was going back and forth between my ex-husband and our home. And so at that point, my husband was on call a lot, which meant he might be at the hospital all night. It meant that he may get called in the middle of dinner. And I had these two young babies.
Yeah.
And it meant that I had to be available 24/7, no matter what, because his job, his profession took precedence. And there's a few interesting dynamics here that happen because you can look at it and say, well, what he's doing is more important because A, he's the breadwinner.
Yep.
And I'm just taking care of the family.
Yeah.
Which anyone who has been in that position knows that is like 3 full-time jobs.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. 100%.
And the other factor there is, well, what he's doing is more important because he's potentially saving lives.
Yeah.
And what am I doing? I'm just keeping people alive, right?
Yeah.
I'm growing people in my body and I'm keeping people alive. That's all.
Yeah.
So, so those are some interesting dynamics that come up for people who are in that position. And it doesn't necessarily have to be physician families, but it could be the same dynamic for any family where one person is the main breadwinner.
Yeah.
And that essentially can overshadow what the other spouse is doing, especially when they are the primary caregiver at home. Yeah. A lot of that can be overlooked because we don't think about the invisible load that is put on that spouse of remembering all the doctor's appointments, the dentist appointments, your own healthcare, which usually gets put on the back burner with everything else that you want to do, and making sure that the kids are going to their sporting events and school meetings and everything that revolves around the home, everything that keeps the home spinning on its axis like its own little planet, like its own little world, is your responsibility.
Yeah.
And that was really hard. And I think those are things that contributed to really putting my own stuff on hold because we didn't have regular childcare. We didn't have family, down the street that could come over. We had some family that wasn't too far away, but not anyone that I could say, hey, can you come over while I run to the doctor? Yeah. That didn't happen. My kids were usually in tow with me. Yeah. And that was rough.
Yeah, it's a challenge and something that a lot of women go through. And, I know that's been my story too, is we moved across the country away from family and didn't have a lot of support. And kind of like you were talking about, my kids were with me all of the
Yeah.
time, most of the time. And in
Yeah.
the beginning of really trying to navigate the relationship that I had with my husband and his career, et cetera, there was a lot of sacrifice. And there was a
Yes.
lot of me feeling like, well, I'm just quote unquote this.
Yeah.
So I don't like take precedent, or the way that
Yes.
I am being called to serve isn't as much of a priority, or whatever you said. And I think
Hmm.
that's so real. Women get into those soundtracks and it can
Yes.
become very overwhelming to try to figure out, how do I navigate this? And where is the quote unquote balance in trying to figure out what's going to make the most sense for our family, but more than
Hmm.
that, like our own personal well-being as women. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I want to talk about next, Lisa. I know you
Hmm.
talked a lot about your dissertation and
Hmm.
interviewing physician spouses and
Hmm.
learning more about, like, what does it really look like to be in a physician family? What is the burnout that's happening for everyone as a
Hmm.
unit? And what is the adversity that really you have to be kind of pushed into overcoming in some capacity day in and day out? I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that, because I know it's extremely real. And to your point,
Hmm.
when you're in a position where you are really putting things on hold to support your spouse's career, you're trying to kind of figure out, okay, well, what is this doing to the whole family and how is it affecting everyone? So if you could share a little
Hmm.
more, I would love that.
Absolutely. And I would also add one more thing to what we were just talking about. When we are in a position where someone's career or someone's profession takes precedence and is always a driving factor, then we feel like we don't matter,
Yeah.
that our needs don't matter. And when I mention, like, he's the breadwinner, he's saving lives, it feels like I can't, like, my feelings aren't valid
Yeah.
because I'm not doing those things. And it feels like then I don't have a right to complain because I should just be happy because I'm
Right.
married to a doctor.
100%.
I don't have the right to feel upset that he's missed my birthday again, that he has missed our kids' basketball game, that he has missed these things because he's on call, because he's helping other people's families. So
Yeah.
what happens is then you start to feel like there's this sense of pride that they're doing these great things for other people. But then at the same time, the feeling of resentment
Yeah.
exists.
Yeah.
And it was important for me to mention that this happens because it ties into the question you just asked and
Yeah.
how that how these issues affect spouses and families. So in my research, what I found was that we know that 80% of the factors that contribute to physician burnout are are caused by the organizations that they work for.
Yeah.
Then the impact of burnout, so emotional exhaustion, depersonalization and cynicism, and lack of personal accomplishment, which means, does what I'm doing matter?
Right.
They get in their head like, "Ugh, what I'm doing just doesn't even matter. And things start to become transactional.
Yeah.
So, in these, and then of course, there's all sorts of impacts of burnout on the patient, like increased medical errors, increased medical stays,
Yep.
lawsuits, all of these things that are not good for anybody, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So when this happens, it crosses over. There's actually a researcher named Bolger who came up with this theory, Bolger's theory, that his crossover theory, that what happens at work crosses over into the marital relationship and
Yeah.
vice versa.
Yeah.
So when a physician is experiencing burnout, it impacts the spouse because they're at home and they want to help, but they can't.
Yeah.
And so, what we also know from the research is that physicians' greatest tool against burnout is their spouse and family. So, when the burnout is crossing over into the marital relationship, we're essentially eroding that
Yeah.
foundation underneath the physician.
Yeah.
So, when the family is not supported, the physician is not supported. When the
Yeah.
physician is not supported, neither is the organization or the patient. So, it's like a
Yeah.
four-pronged approach there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I interviewed the spouses, what I came up with, there were 10 themes. Loneliness was a big one
Yeah.
because they were on their own a lot, long hours, physician working nights, working weekends, taking call. So they were lonely. There were many moves.
Yeah.
You know, a physician might move for medical school, residency, fellowship, first job. and they don't usually stay in their first job very long, 2 to 3 years on average. So you've got the family who is, again, potentially bouncing across the country multiple times to support this one individual's profession.
Yeah.
So then we also have feeling like a single parent. That was another theme, because they are attending all of these school events, sports events, birthday parties, anything you could think of, parent teacher conferences, they are doing on their own. They're doing bedtimes, they're doing carpool, they're doing all of these things by themselves. So
Yeah.
then you find that this is affecting the relationship. There are relational issues because they start to feel like roommates with rings.
Yeah.
And everything becomes about logistics. They start like, oh, I need you to pick up milk on your way home. I need you to do this. And I need, oh, don't forget. And it's like they are ticking boxes, but they're not communicating together.
Yeah.
So self-care was another theme where, like I mentioned earlier, we're making sure that everyone else has what they need.
Yeah.
But not ourselves.
Yep.
And when my two youngest at the time, because I didn't have my fourth yet, they were, oh gosh, I think my daughter was, she was a baby. And my son, like I said, was 14 months older. And I remember saying to my husband, I am going to pull my hair out if I don't get out of this house alone.
Yeah.
And that's when I started going to yoga class. Once a week, Thursday night, 7 p.m. That was my time. I got to go to yoga class. And then I went into teaching. And that's how that seed got planted for me, was me finally being able to take that time for myself.
Yeah.
So other things that came up were also pride in their service. So feeling like they are proud of them when they would go to dinner, someone would see them and say, oh, your husband is such a great doctor. He took such wonderful care of my mother when she was in the hospital.
Yeah.
And so you feel proud of what they're doing. And you know that when they're away from your family, they're doing good things. They are helping people. It's a noble profession, right?
Yeah.
But again, as I mentioned, there is that alternative feeling. Yeah. Like you've got, your angel and your devil on each side of your shoulder. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, but it's also taking away from my family. While your family has an emergency over, insert any holiday that families are together, right?
Yeah.
He's there for your family, but he's not there for ours.
Yeah.
So you get really used to having birthdays on off days that aren't the actual birthday. You get used to celebrating your anniversary a week or a month or 6 months later. Yeah. You get used to the interruptions during date night. You get used to postponing these things. So there is something that occurs that is called postponement. I refer to it as someday syndrome in my framework. And what it is everybody feels like life will be better when, fill in the blank. Yeah. And everybody does this. It's not just physician families, but for us, it's life will be better when medical school's over. Oh, when I finally match in residency. Oh, when we finally get our first job. Oh, when we finally get our first real paycheck and we don't have to eat, ramen noodles and mac and cheese. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it just keeps getting postponed because life just keeps going. Yes. There's no end point where, you've hit a magic place. Life changes, the scenario changes, but you never get quote unquote there. Yeah. You never get to the end.
I love that you shared this concept of someday syndrome, because as you just said, Lisa, this is applicable to everyone in some capacity. And it sounds like, it's extremely amplified for a lot of different reasons in physician families. Mm-hmm. But I know, even trying to think through parallels and even reflecting into my own life, that happens often, where we get into these headspaces of thinking, everything will be better, or I'll be able to start this thing, or I'll finally commit when. Mm-hmm. And that really is a recipe for keeping yourself stuck and keeping yourself potentially really in this place where you don't feel that great physically, mentally, emotionally, et cetera. Yep. And so that's what I'd love to talk about next, Lisa. Mm-hmm. I know you talk so much about here are the different kinds of things that physician families are really managing. Here's what the emotion is. Here's what the feeling is. Here's what the actual dynamic looks like. Mm-hmm. So for anyone anyone that's listening to this that relates to this, whether they're a physician family or they just see the parallels in their own life,
Yeah.
what do you actually start to do tangibly to help yourself kind of manage the actual circumstances at hand? And what can you do, or what have you done, or what do you maybe coach other people through when it comes to helping yourself and really starting to embrace the season and making sure that you're talking about your needs and getting your needs met, getting into places where you're prioritizing self-care, doing what you need to do so you're not continuing on this road to defeat or burnout or whatever it is? I'd love for you to speak to that a little bit. We'll get back to our conversation shortly after this message. If you are an overwhelmed and completely confused mom who just wants a simplified, easy to follow, and understandable plan when it comes to their health and wellness journey, then you're in the right place. As a wellness coach, I focus most on empowering women to follow a highly personalized and bio-individual plan that actually gets you results and that feels sustainable for your longevity. I'd love to invite you to set up a free coaching call to talk about your health and wellness journey. Head to erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call today. Again, that URL is erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call. And to make it even easier, head to the show notes of this podcast and click free coaching session to set up your call ASAP. Now let's dive back into the conversation.
Wow. I have so many thoughts in my head. Hopefully I can remember all of them because they're swirling around like a tornado. Since I'm in Florida, I'll say hurricane.
I love it.
Since I live on the coast and that's a real issue for us. But
yeah.
So the first thing is awareness, right?
Yeah.
We need to be able to recognize that something's happening, that something's not right. Usually we just start to feel like something's just off and we start thinking, oh, again, life will be better when. But again, life just keeps going. And I call it someday syndrome because someday never comes. So in order to kind of take control of the situation, we both need to be on the same page. We need to have open communication, which is a big deal because, when you've got busy schedules, again, like you said, whether it's a physician family or not, when you have busy schedules, it becomes all about logistics. Who's picking up Billy? Who's dropping off Sally? Fill in the blank. It's task oriented. And we lose that connection with our spouse. And when we're not seeing each other, when we're not spending a lot of time together, communication dissipates.
Yeah.
It might be a text. It might be a note, a Post-it on the refrigerator or the, kitchen counter. So we have to have communication. I say all the time that communication is the key to connection. So it has to be a priority for both of you. And you have to be able to find time, even if it's 5 minutes, to just say, where are we at?
Yeah.
What are our strengths right now? What are our challenges?
Yeah.
And really coming up with the idea together of how we can solve it. And I was doing an interview on my podcast with another physician spouse. And one of the things that she said was she was really struggling with some of the tasks at home and with the childcare. And I think she had 3 kids at the time.
Yeah.
And her husband said, well, why didn't you tell me? And she didn't want to bother him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, his job was more important. And
Right.
so what she was feeling, she felt like, I don't have the right to complain about this.
Yeah.
And so he said, well, let's get help. Let's figure this out. So they did. And, they've been married over 20 years now. So it's, you have to have that communication. You have to share with your partner or spouse, this is what I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
And this is how I think it can make life better.
Yeah.
And hopefully you both can collaborate on that. And the other thing the other component that goes along with communication is these micro moments. So when you have small kids, your time alone can be really, few and far between.
Yeah.
So if you can just have 10 minutes where you come home, you go in the bedroom or office or wherever, close the door, it's 10 minutes, and you say, here's how my day was. And you get to download for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then your spouse gets to download for 5 minutes. because we both have stuff going on in our day, right?
100%. Yep.
Now, if we can extend that and it can be 20 minutes and we each get 10, great. The other thing that I like to do is have these like dream sessions or planning sessions.
Yeah.
And as our kids are older now, our youngest is about to go to college. So we're semi-empty nesters. So we have a lot more free time now.
Yeah.
But when we didn't, it was going on a walk.
Yeah.
It was taking the dogs for a walk. It was taking the kids for a walk. It was, a date night if we had it, which, sometimes for people who have busy schedules or in physician families, it might be a post-call day where you have post-call pancakes while the kids are at school. And, you learn to adapt to what fits this schedule and what makes sense for us.
Yeah.
And you sit down and you talk about your dreams, your goals, your plans. You kind of future plan. What does that look like together? And you create a roadmap. And that is something that, maybe even if you just get to do it quarterly, but you still stay in touch.
Yeah.
That is super important to find those moments that you can be together and connect.
Yeah.
That is my biggest tip for people is to have those moments of connection.
Yes.
And when you look at other professions, you obviously have first responders of, different types, police, EMTs, et cetera, who have stressful positions, just like physicians.
Yeah.
You've got nurses who are working maybe 4 10-hour days. You've got your military families who are dealing with, life and death.
Yep.
Who are dealing with time away if their partner is deployed, who are feeling like single parents, who are actually single parenting.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of parallels with some of these other professions.
Yeah.
And, you might have an attorney who's working long hours and working on a tough case and you never see them because they're always in court. So these things that I'm talking about, I think, span multiple professions.
They do. And, one of the things that I want to recall is how you spoke about just this idea of connection and communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the next layer that I'd love for you to share a little bit more about is speaking to your needs to your partner. Mm-hmm. So I know you talked about kind of downloading your day and talking about what you had going on and talking about, the stress of it all and how important it is to productively communicate and connect through that, because you're 100% accurate on that. Like that is really, truly one of the most pivotal things we can do when we're living busy schedules or when we're really trying to kind of figure out how do we reconnect or how do we make sure we're on the same page. And so my next question for you, Lisa, is more on the side of in those connection moments or when you're communicating, what does talking about your needs look like for you? And how have you maybe practiced that? Or would you talk to other physician spouses about this? Because like we've already talked about in this conversation, like our own well-being, our own self-care, taking care of what we need and expressing that is a huge part of us being able to continue to show up the way we want to and the way we deserve to as women and as spouses, et cetera. So talk a little bit about kind of the needs component and what does that look like? Is it a communication situation for you? Is it scheduling things out very strategically and then telling your partner this is what it's going to be? Or is it a collaboration? I would love to hear your thoughts on this too.
Yeah. So first of all, I think you have to identify what is it that you need? Yeah. Because if you don't know what you need, your partner's not going to know what you need and they're not going to know how to help. And I see these memes that talk about invisible load and like when he asks me what he can do to help me around the house, if I have to make him a list, that's just one more thing for me to do. Well, yes, it is, but our partners are also not mind readers, right?
100%. Yeah.
So we have to be able to identify what is it that is a challenge for me right now. And what is going to make it better? And if you don't know, that's okay. But you can at least identify what the need is when you're having a conversation. And then you can say, I'm not sure what it looks like to fix this issue. So I need some ideas from you.
Yeah.
And including them in the process. And, many of the spouses that I spoke with, when we already know that they are feeling like they have a hard time sharing what their experience is because the physician's job is already put on a pedestal, right?
Yeah.
But what else happens is when something is challenging, like your child gets sent to the principal's office or, the car, the radiator went out on the car or fill in any calamity, right?
Right.
So you have to, many times the spouses feel like they have to, like they're walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
And they have to censor what they're sharing with their partner based on the mood that they're in when they get home.
Yeah.
And so they may even reserve any of these challenges for another time because it's like, oh, again, their profession is dictating so much about our relationship and how we're communicating. So to get back to your original question, we have to know what our needs or what the problem is.
Yeah.
We have to know, hopefully, a solution.
Yeah.
So I really like to problem solve. So if I notice that there is a problem, I'm going, okay, well, looking up like, okay, how do we fix it? And I usually go to my husband and say, here are some thoughts I have on how to fix it. What are your thoughts? And many times he might be like, oh, I didn't even realize that was an issue. And I think it's important for both parties to know that we have this open line of communication so that you can come to me as well. And you can tell me, hey, I need 10 minutes alone when I come home because my days are so jam-packed with life and death situations that I need to be able to take off my physician hat and put on my parent hat. Yeah. So if you can just give me 10 minutes of quiet, like I'm going to go in my office for 10 minutes. And then when I come out, I'm going to be ready to handle home life. Yeah. So I think that's important. So from the person who has this crazy schedule to be able to identify what their needs are too. Yeah. And when we're talking about self-care, it can look different for different people, especially depending on if they have children and the age of their children. Yeah. So I mentioned earlier about how I became a yoga teacher. Well, the gym that I was teaching at had childcare. So I was actually able to take my kids there with me. I was able to teach and I was able to get my workout in on the days that I wasn't teaching. So I was able to get self-care that way. Yeah. And that came in the form of physical movement. Now, as we progressed and our kids got older and life looked a little bit different, self-care looked different. So self-care looked a lot like being able to take some time away to read a book, being able to take a walk, being able to spend time with my dog. Yeah. And it also looked like time away with my husband alone. Yeah. And as things moved forward, now we've been together 29 years now. Wow. And as we've moved forward, I've become really good at saying, this doesn't work for me. Yeah. And I remember in 2021, we were supposed to take a trip and it was going to be like our first trip alone together in, I don't know, 10 years maybe.
Long time.
And and then COVID happened. So it got postponed till 2021. And we went away and he had been taking a lot of call at that point. And time away was really important. And time away without kids was priceless. Yeah. And I don't mean that to sound like, oh, we don't want to be near our kids, but we've never not had kids at home because remember, I had my son. Yeah. And so being able to get away without kids meant that we were able to have lots of in-depth conversations. Yeah. And I remember we were in Turks and Caicos and we were standing on the beach and the sun was going down. And I remember I have a picture of us and it's on my nightstand from that, like right after having this conversation.
Yeah.
And I was telling him, I said, life is getting crazy and I miss you and I'm not seeing you. And you are on call 3-4 nights out of the week.
Yeah.
And at this point, he was able to do something about it because he was taking call for other people.
Yeah.
So they would be like, oh, hey, I'll pay you to take my call, which the extra money was nice.
Yeah.
But at what cost?
Exactly.
And I said, this is not working for me. The money is good, but I value our relationship more.
Yeah.
And so we got back from that trip and he told the people whose call he was taking, he said, I'm sorry, but I'm not taking call anymore.
Yeah.
I'm taking my call and that's it. And it was at this point where I had just finished my bachelor's degree. So remember, I was writing about burnout. I was writing about physician burnout and continuing medical education courses. And so he was able to kind of witness the transformation for me.
Yeah.
And see what I had been studying and what I had been writing about. And he knew, because I was sharing like what I was doing.
Yeah.
He knew how important this was to me.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you're able to make changes and sometimes you're not.
Yeah.
So I think one of the biggest things to be able to recognize is, what do I have control over?
Yeah.
And what don't I?
Yes.
And we need to make those changes for the things that we can, because I mentioned burnout, 80% of those factors are the responsibility of the organization that a physician's working for. But those other 20%, you can't play victim.
Yeah.
You need to be responsible for the other 20% of the things that you can control.
Yeah.
And so I kind of called him out on that. And and we're here we are now, 2026. So 6 years after that, 5 years after that. And we've had more vacations together. We've had more conversations. And now with our youngest daughter about to go off to college, I mean, she's working a lot. And so we have a lot of evenings together. We have a lot of walks together. We have a lot of time together where we can future plan and we can talk about what things he's experiencing in work and what I'm experiencing in the work that I'm doing now. And so the conversations have changed, but the premise is still the same.
Yeah.
That you have to prioritize your relationship, you have to communicate, and you have to decide, what do I need?
Yes.
And right now, like, my workouts are on the calendar and they've been on the calendar for years now.
Yeah.
When I realized I need to take time for myself, it was on the calendar. That 7 p.m. yoga class every Thursday night, that was my time.
Yeah.
So
So
you have to look at what's in your control, what's not in your control, and how you can manipulate is, has a negative connotation, but how you can manipulate your schedule to make sure that everyone's needs are met, including yours. So you have to consider yourself a priority, because if you don't, no one else will either.
100%. The thing this is still ringing in my head, and I want to say it again, and I want to recall it, because I want the audience and whoever's listening to this to really pay attention to what Lisa said. And she said, when you're telling your story about Turks and Caicos and sharing with your husband how, I miss you and this isn't working for me, and really getting into that communication, and then talking more about the work you were doing and what you were being called to do and the road that you were on. You said he knew what was important to me because I shared it.
Yes.
Because I spoke about it, because I communicated. And that is like the key nugget that I want the audience to take away, because it's so incredibly crucial to understand in any aspect of our health journey. When we're talking about marriage, when we're talking about our self-care, when we're talking about what our needs are, filling ourselves up, taking care of our families, our kids, whatever it is, the communication component really is massive. And you have touched on that over and over and over in this entire conversation. And it's something that I want women to feel empowered to hear and understand, because this is very real. When we think about all of these things inside of our life that can sometimes feel hard, or that we maybe have resentment over, or that we don't know how to navigate, it really is taking that step back and building enough awareness to say, well, have I communicated enough? Have I been open enough? Have I been honest enough, sharing what I need, or creating the boundaries like you talked about, or putting safeguards in place, and understanding like you cannot and are not called to do that all on your own, especially when you're in a family, and especially when you are walking alongside a spouse, supporting their career, whatever the situation may be. The communication component, it's just huge. And I can't thank you enough for sharing that, Lisa, because it's the thing I want women to hear over and over, because this matters for every aspect of our wellness.
Yes.
It really does.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And to piggyback on what we're already talking about here, many of the women that I spoke with, not only did they say, I didn't realize that medicine was going to dictate so much of our marriage.
Yeah.
They also said, I didn't think it was going to be this hard.
Yeah.
And obviously, professions and what people do and certain aspects of marriage are difficult for, can be different things for different people.
Yeah.
But I think one of the key takeaways is that marriage is not easy.
Yeah.
It is not 50-50.
No.
Because that means that I'm only given half all the time. And my spouse is only given half all the time.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite concepts comes from Brene Brown. And she was talking about her husband, Steve, who is a pediatrician. And she was talking about how they communicate with each other by saying, I'm at a 70.
Yeah.
Meaning out of 100.
Yeah.
So marriage is never 50-50. You have to look at it as 100-100. And if you look at your spouse and you say, man, I'm at a 30 today.
Yeah.
Then your spouse knows, ooh, I really got to kick it into gear.
Yeah.
And then that is a way, that is it. She gave us an easy way to communicate with our partners of where we're at that day.
Yeah.
What do we have left in the tank today?
Yes.
And so marriage is something that is, I think everyone kind of maybe goes into it with different expectations, no matter what the professions are of either party. Yeah. But I think they think it's just going to be an extension of dating.
Yeah.
And it's not.
No, it's not.
It is definitely not. Like, you are doing the thing. You are in life together.
Yeah.
And it brings with it a whole host of other things, It's real adulting and making sure that the light bill is paid, and, oh, shoot, the roof is leaking. And, oh, our teenager just had a fender bender, and all of these things come in. And at the root of it all is your relationship.
Yep.
And it is, when all of this is gone, when the kids are off at college or beyond, when the grandkids come, when you retire, when all of these things are gone and titles don't matter, what is left is your relationship.
Yeah.
And many people end up getting divorced when their kids go off to college because they've just been living parallel lives this whole time. And they look at each other and they go, I don't know who this person is.
Yeah.
So staying connected, working on your marriage together. Yeah. It's not a one-way street. One person just can't work on it alone.
Yeah.
You have to communicate, and you have to keep your marriage as a priority.
Yeah. I love that. Such an important reminder. And, the thing that I just really appreciate more than anything, Lisa, is, again, this topic of connection, this topic of communication. And when you're in a season where you feel like you're on the road to burnout, or you feel like you have all of these hard, heavy feelings going on, oftentimes the deep rooted reason is because there's not enough connection. There's not enough communication. There's not enough digging into what you need and then expressing that. And it's the thing that women really need to hear over and over. And so the one last question I want to ask you, Lisa, is kind of for the woman that's listening to this that can relate to, maybe she's a physician spouse, just like you. Maybe she's heard some of the things you've shared today, and it's a parallel into her life in some capacity. And she wants to figure out a way to kind of redirect and get on a path where communication and connection is a little bit better, where maybe she doesn't feel so overwhelmed or burnt out. Or maybe she's just trying to figure out, how do I express my needs? Because it's just felt really hard up until this point, and I haven't figured out a way to express it. And I haven't figured out a way to make it feel like I can fit it in and I can safely share it, or whatever the case may be. What would you say to her as a simple starting point for, here's what you can do to help yourself, to help your relationship, your marriage, and just how you feel day in and day out?
That's a great question, Erin. I think asking yourself the question, what feels heavy for me? And if you can identify what feels heavy, which is coming back to the having awareness, and how do I lighten the load? What does that look like? Asking yourself that question. I think finding support is important. People who are going through it. So for physician spouses, I mentioned the alliances earlier. There are, plenty of Facebook groups, and there are coaches out there. There are podcasts out there. And that is a way that you can get support in that, you feel like, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one. You mean it's not just me?
Yeah.
It's not like, hi, I'm the problem, it's me, right? It's not that.
Right.
And, but also I think having a sounding board, if it's not your spouse, which hopefully you are having communication with your spouse, but having communication with someone who gets it.
Yeah.
Someone who understands, someone who knows what it's like to walk in your shoes, because many people don't get it.
Yeah.
Many people who are even your family members don't get it, because they're like, well, what, how was life so bad? You're married to a doctor. It can't be that bad. Right. And, at least your spouse has a good job. And, they come up with all these other excuses, and that is minimizing and invalidating our experience, which is not fair. Right. And so finding someone online, in person, who gets it, maybe a coach, maybe, a friend, a neighbor who you can go walk with.
Yeah.
For me, when my kids were little, not only did I get out and meet people at the gym, but I joined a mom's group. Yeah. I'm not sure if this type of organization still exists, but it was called Mothers and More.
Yeah, and there's similar ones. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm sure there are many different ones. I'm far removed because my youngest is now 18, but I would take my young ones there. Yeah. And I met amazing families that I'm still friends with here 26 years later now. Yeah, wow. And that was huge for me, life-saving. Because people knew at the end of the day, no matter what their professions were, they knew that having babies, having small children is a job. Yeah. And they knew that aspect of my life. Yeah. So finding people in similar situations, not just because misery loves company, but because you can feel like you're not alone. Yes. And that is so important, because if you feel like you're alone, then that adds to anxiety, it adds to depression, it adds to, potential burnout. Not good. So,
not good.
So finding people, find your people. You gotta find your people. And they're available online. They're available in person. You just have to look for them.
Yeah, I love that, Lisa. And I appreciate you sharing that too, because community is also everything. Just like connection and conversations and building your relationships, community is everything. And having that support is everything. And so I can't thank you enough for your incredible perspective today, your amazing story, just helping us really think through this idea of when you're in a situation or a scenario where you're really supporting your spouse's career and you've had to potentially put your own things on hold for a season, and you're trying to continue to figure out, how do I protect my needs? How do I experience like talking through those things with someone else? Like, it's just given us a lot of incredible nuggets. And so I'm so grateful for you, Lisa. Before we wrap up, can you quickly share how people can find you online, how they can connect to your work, how they can listen to your podcast, all of those things?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I hang out mostly on Instagram, and my handle there is at the MedLife Matrix. And you can also find me on my podcast, which is the MedLife Support Podcast. And I also have an Instagram that's the same, at the MedLife Support Podcast. But the MedLife Matrix is where I post most.
Awesome.
And I have a Facebook page with the same handle. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Lisa Muehlenbein, which you'll have to look in the show notes for the spelling of that.
Yeah.
And my website is themedlifematrix.com, where I've got lots of free resources that I think anybody, even if you're not a physician family, will be able to appreciate and integrate into your life to
Awesome.
reduce the potential of burnout and increase your connection.
Yeah, I love that. And Lisa, we'll make sure that everything is linked in the show notes of this podcast. So if you are interested in connecting more and listening more to what Lisa does and her incredible work, please head there for all of the information. And Lisa, thank you again for your time today. I am so incredibly grateful for you, my friend.
Absolutely. It has been my pleasure and privilege to be here.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do for ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.